Welcome to the Depth Dive. We've got quite the stack of sources today. We're looking at everything, really. Geopolitics, huge tech shifts, corporate strategy, even, you know, personal legacy planning.
It's a lot to cover.
It is. But our mission, as always, is to cut through that noise. We want to pinpoint the really high-stakes decisions, the big disruptions that are shaping things globally and economically, like right now.
And it's a really dynamic picture today. We're going to be charting what looks like a major battle for the internet's front door.
The browser wars, essentially.
Yeah, OpenAI versus Google. Then we'll dig into the struggle for economic leverage, tariffs, critical minerals, that whole supply chain fight.
And connecting all that, why long-term planning seems more urgent than ever, whether that's for nations or companies or even families.
Exactly. That intentionality piece feels critical right now.
Okay, so let's dive in. Starting where I think the disruption is loudest right now, that AI browser war. OpenAI has launched Atlas.
Right, built around ChatGPT. And it's aimed squarely at Google Chrome, a direct challenge to their search dominance.
The scale, even at launch, is kind of staggering. ChatGPT already has, 800 million weekly active users?
That's the number. Think about that. Roughly 1/10 of the entire world population is already using the underlying platform.
Which gives Atlas instant, massive distribution.
Incredible distribution, yeah. And it hits Google right where it hurts. Because the fundamental shift here is moving away from just getting a list of links, traditional keyword results.
Which is Google's bread and butter.
Totally. And moving towards these conversational tools that actually synthesize the information for you first.
So if I ask Atlas about, say, the latest on a government shutdown.
You get a quick summary, the key points, and the links if you want to dig deeper.
Yeah.
You ask Google, you mostly just get the links.
That efficiency push? It makes the old search model feel, kind of clunky all of a sudden?
Obsolete, almost. And you saw the market react instantly. Alphabet, Google's parent company, their shares dipped about 2.8% right after the Atlas announcement.
And you have to understand the why behind that drop. It's huge. 57% of Google's revenue comes from search ads. AdSense.
Right, AdSense. That's the system where companies bid on keywords like best running shoes or cheap flights.
So if people start getting their answers directly from Atlas synthesized answers, they might not click those keyword links anymore.
Exactly. If they bypass the links, the value of bidding on those keywords just tanks. That whole revenue model, 57% of it, is seriously, fundamentally under threat.
It's like the classic innovator's dilemma playing out in real time. But okay, what's Google's move then? They can't just sit there and watch half their revenue potentially evaporate.
No way. They absolutely have to counter. And their strength, that huge AdSense network, might also be their path forward. We should probably expect them to start integrating sponsored content directly into their own AI summaries.
So instead of bidding on the click, you sponsor the summary itself.
Kind of. Imagine asking Google's AI something, and part of the synthesized answer includes, a sponsored block of information or a product recommendation. They have to shift the ad unit away from the link and into the conversation.
So the war isn't just for the browser. It's a total rethink of online advertising and how we consume info.
Okay, let's take that idea of strategic dominance and pivot from digital turf to the geopolitical chessboard.
Good transition, because leverage is key in both arenas. We saw former President Trump talking recently about tariffs, saying the U.S. would struggle if the Supreme Court ruled against him on his tariff authority.
He called the tariff card vital, right, for negotiation.
Yeah, his argument is basically you need tariffs for leverage, especially when other countries are using them against you. It's presented as like an economic defense tool to force fairer trade.
And he's pointing to results, claiming they worked?
He is. The sources mentioned claims tariffs helped stop a potential war between India and Pakistan, but maybe more significantly that they're the main reason companies are bringing investment back to the U.S. Like pharmaceuticals and chips?
Exactly. The numbers cited are pretty big. Something like $1.268 trillion in projects greenlit since March 1st. You've got TSMC putting $100 billion into Arizona, Micron in Idaho and Virginia.
And Merck building a big pharma facility in Virginia too, right? $3 billion.
That's the one. All examples tied back to that strategy of using tariffs to encourage or maybe force reshoring, projected to create, 500,000 jobs?
Okay, so that economic strategy ties directly into another resource battle, critical minerals. Specifically, the U.S. and Australia signing this big $8.5 billion deal on rare earths.
Yeah, aimed squarely at countering China's dominance in that space. It's a huge deal.
Because China controls, the vast majority of the processing.
It's the refining. That's the choke point. China controls something like 90% of global rare earth refining,
Mm.
taking the raw ore and actually processing it into usable materials.
And this U.S. Australia deal puts serious money into building that capacity outside China.
$1 billion each, just over the next 6 months, dedicated to building refining capability.
Yeah.
It's urgent.
But let's pause on refining. Why is that the critical step, not just, digging the stuff out of the ground?
Well, the refining process, it's messy. It's environmentally challenging, very toxic, requires complex chemical treatments. Historically, the U.S. actually was dominant.
Really?
Yeah, the Mountain Pass mine in California used to produce maybe 70% of the world's supply back in the day. But the environmental regulations around the toxic refining process got incredibly strict in the late 90s.
Under the Clinton administration's EPA, I think Carol Browner was head of the EPA then?
That's right. Those regulations, while aiming to protect the environment domestically, made it economically really difficult, almost impossible, to do that complex refining in the U.S.
So we basically regulated the dirty part of the process out of the country.
And inadvertently opened the door wide for China to invest heavily and essentially monopolize that entire crucial refining stage over decades.
Wow. So we solved a domestic environmental issue by exporting the supply chain and creating a massive geopolitical vulnerability down the line.
Pretty much, yeah. We're now scrambling to undo a monopoly we helped create.
Okay, speaking of vulnerabilities and centralized control, let's jump from physical supply chains to digital ones. That big Amazon Web Services outage recently.
Oh yeah, that caused chaos. Took down Amazon itself, Ring cameras, Reddit, Coinbase, Robinhood, tons of major sites.
And it immediately raised questions about centralization, didn't it? Elon Musk made a point about it.
He did. He pointed out that even supposedly secure end-to-end encrypted services like Signal, well, they run on AWS infrastructure.
So if AWS goes down...
Signal goes down.
Yeah.
It proved AWS is fundamentally in the loop, as he put it. They can effectively shut down even encrypted services just by having an outage. It really highlights how fragile and centralized our digital world is.
That centralization risk,
Hmm.
it leads nicely into thinking about high-stakes corporate strategy. Let's look at the talk around Elon Musk's potential $1 trillion pay package at Tesla.
Which Cathie Wood strongly endorsed.
Right. But it's not cash, is it? It's structured very differently.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a long-term stock award. And it hinges on Tesla hitting this absolutely massive $8.5 trillion valuation by 2035.
Which is, what, 8 times where they are now?
Roughly, yeah. It's designed purely as an incentive structure, aligning his reward entirely with achieving that exponential, almost unprecedented growth.
Okay, but let me push back a little. Is a target that huge over that long a time frame? Is it really an incentive, or is some massive payout almost baked in eventually, even if they don't hit the full $8.5 trillion? Is it genuinely a stretch goal?
That's definitely the debate, right? The counter-argument is that his previous huge compensation plan was achieved, actually ahead of schedule, suggesting he does respond to these, moonshot targets. The risk for him is real if the company stagnates, but the potential reward is astronomical. It frames accountability around that massive valuation target, which is different from, say, boards just approving huge cash bonuses regardless of long-term performance.
Interesting contrast. Now compare that kind of ambitious, maybe controversial structure with what's happening in legacy media, Warner Brothers Discovery.
Right, WBD.
Yeah.
They initially turned down an offer from the Ellisons, but now they're signaling they are open to a sale.
And the stock jumped like 10% on that news.
It did. And what they're doing now is quite strategic. It relates to this idea of the corporate flywheel.
The flywheel, like getting all the parts working together smoothly.
Exactly. The concept is that if you have a core asset, in WBD's case, this massive content library, the right owner can integrate it with distribution, production, streaming, everything to maximize its value and spin that flywheel faster.
And WBD is prepping the asset for that.
That's what it looks like. They're actively restructuring before a potential sale. Specifically, selling off the global networks division with its associated debt.
Cleaning up the balance sheet.
Making it a cleaner, more attractive asset. They're trying to create an auction environment for this really valuable content library, making it easier for a buyer to just plug it into their own flywheel. Think historically, like how Disney integrated Pixar or Marvel.
Okay. We've talked corporate strategy, centralization, governance. Let's look at what happens when governance just completely breaks down. California.
Oh boy. Yeah, the DOJ investigation into California's homelessness funding. $24 billion allocated.
Massive fraud alleged.
It was pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Developers accused of $50 million in funding fraud. And the detail that just jumps out. One developer allegedly put up to $2 million on Amex cards.
For personal luxury
Yeah.
goods.
Charged to a housing project that was never even built.
That's audacious, doesn't even cover it. So what's the governance lesson here?
Well, the analysis suggests it highlights a fundamental failure in the government's approach, trying to solve the problem by just handing out grant money.
Which opens the door to fraud and misuse.
Massively. Instead of focusing on reducing friction, streamlining the permits, the inspections, cutting the red tape that actually stops developers from building quickly and efficiently.
So grants create complexity and opportunities for fraud, while reducing bureaucratic friction might actually lead to more housing.
That's the core argument, yes. Simplify the process rather than just throwing money at complicated grant schemes.
That kind of governance failure, or maybe just high-stakes risk, seems mirrored in what's happening with Argentina right now.
Yeah, the struggle over that $20 billion bailout loan for President Milei's government. Big U.S. banks involved, J.P. Morgan, Goldman, BofA.
And they're hesitant.
Well, they want collateral, essentially.
Yeah.
They're asking the U.S. Treasury to backstop the loan.
Meaning, if Argentina defaults, the U.S. taxpayer picks up the tab.
That's the implication, yes.
Ugh.
Shifting the risk from the banks to the public sector.
But hold on, Milei's reforms seem to be having some effect, right? Inflation reportedly dropped massively from like 211% down to under 32% in September.
The numbers are showing progress, definitely.
And Argentina's entire GDP is, what, comparable to maybe the state of Virginia? Why are these giant global banks so jittery they need a U.S. guarantee for a loan of that relative size?
It boils down to Argentina's history, I think. That underlying political instability, the track record of reforms not sticking long-term, even with Milei's current success. The banks see that long-term liability risk as too high to carry themselves.
So they'd rather offload it.
Prefer to, yeah. But the stakes are really high. If this loan package falls apart, it could seriously undermine what many see as a really important free market, anti-socialist experiment happening in Latin America right now.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. AI fundamentally reshaping markets with Atlas, how history and, frankly, regulation shaped the current fight over rare earths, how economic strategy like tariffs is being used to drive national outcomes.
And it all seems to circle back to this idea of intentional design, doesn't it? Strategy and governance.
Absolutely. The difference between, say, hitting that $8.5 trillion Tesla valuation or successfully selling off WBD, or even just running a state program without massive fraud, it all seems to come down to having a clear plan, clear intent, and crucially strong governance to execute it.
Well said.
And that brings us, interestingly, to the personal level. We picked up on this trend. Wealthy families increasingly writing these non-binding family mission statements.
Yeah, as a way to try and head off fighting, avoid squandering the fortune down the line, giving guidance to trustees for future generations.
So if the goal for them isn't just preserving money, but passing on values, guiding principles, ensuring the wealth actually does something positive long-term.
Then the question becomes, why do we often hold our own personal lives, our own legacies, to a lower standard of strategic planning than these huge corporations or ultra-wealthy families?
Right. And that leads us to the final provocative thought for you, the listener. If you don't actively define your own mission, your own values, like a personal or family constitution, then the world, or maybe your own descendants, will likely define them for you.
And often in ways that lead to conflict or missed opportunities or drift.
Exactly. It's about taking control of that narrative. For anyone who finds that idea compelling, wanting to dig deeper into legacy and intentional planning, there's a book called The Ultimate Gift that explores these themes really powerfully.
It's a great resource. And it really connects how these big ideas, governance, strategy, intent scale, all the way down from the global economy right to the individual and family level.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive gave you a lot to think about. We encourage you, keep the conversation going. Send us your questions over on Man Circles.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.